Hi, everybody. So I'm Holly, and I'm the co-op student this semester in the Department of Business and Tourism. And we're going to start our panel now. And I'm just going to introduce our panelists really quickly. So right next to me, we have Jamie Melrose, and she's the project coordinator at Common Roots Urban Farm. And next to Jamie is Dave Rideout, and he's the president and CEO of MetroWorks Employment Association and Stonehearth Bakery. And then next to Dave, we have Kathy Deagle-Gammon, and she's the executive director at the Dartmouth Adult Services Center, and she is also the president at Social Enterprise Network of Nova Scotia. So the way I'm going to get this to work is that I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and we're just going to move down the line, and everyone's going to be able to answer. And then if we have time left over, then we'll take some questions from students if anyone has any questions. Okay, so question one is, why is your organization a social enterprise? So tell us a bit about your organization and its social impact.
Okay, I'll go first. So I work with MetroWorks and Stonehearth Bakery. So Stonehearth Bakery has been around since '85, and the organization has two purposes. One is to make an excellent product that we sell to a number of restaurants and stores around town. But secondarily, or not secondarily, but in addition to, it's to provide a training opportunity or training venue for people that have experienced a mental health difficulty. So we blend both sides of that business model. So it's so for us, that's what when we talk about social enterprise, and that's what makes us, or we feel that makes us a social enterprise. It's the ability to have that double bottom line. So it's not only about making a great product, but it's also about providing some opportunity for individuals that otherwise wouldn't get an opportunity. And all the revenue from the sales of products from the bakery goes back in to support the program, to allow us to continue to expand and to provide additional services as much as we can. So it's us in a nutshell. Kathy, you want to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Whoa, that's loud. My name is Kathy Deagle-Gammon, and I'm going to answer your question kind of in two parts, one for DASC and one for SENS, which is the shortened version of Social Enterprise Network of Nova Scotia. DASC is a social enterprise that supports persons with an intellectual disability and also those with a dual diagnosis, those with an intellectual disability and a mental health issue. We provide services across the spectrum, so supporting persons with multi-challenging needs right up to those persons that we support in employment, in waged employment in the community, and also those people who are aging. And so we look at how do we help people build social capacity and be able to be fully included in their community. From the social enterprise part, the businesses that we run are promotional button manufacturing, kitting service, mailing services. We do packaging of non-perishable food items. We have a program that works out recycling at the Halifax Airport, and another program that we run out of Miller Waste. So that's sort of what DASC is in a nutshell, and really the full vision about how people with disabilities are fully participating in their community as they choose it to be, and that is not always employment. The Social Enterprise Network of Nova Scotia came about because in this province, I guess probably starting a little bit with the I-VNA report, some of the things that came out talking about, there's a public sector, there's a private sector, and then there's a third sector, and we believe that third sector is the nonprofit or the social enterprise sector. Not all nonprofits are social enterprise, and not all social enterprises are nonprofits. And it's important to kind of remember that. One of the things that was important for us at DASC is that together we're better. So building an ecosystem where we could bring social enterprises together that could then negotiate with government, could look at policy, legislation, procurement, business development, and to look at mission-driven work and how we can make a better Nova Scotia through social enterprise.
So I run Common Roots Urban Farm, and so Common Roots Urban Farm started when the hospital got a piece of land as a land swap, and they needed an interim land use. and some brilliant, kind, ecological hospital administrator suggested that they turn the farm into an urban farm. And so I was hired on to actuate that. So when I heard, I think when most people think urban farm, they think community garden. But when I heard urban farm, there's like a farm part in there. And I think the difference between a farm and a garden is that a farm sells things. So we wanted to put the farm part in the urban farm and have a bit of a business in there so that there's like some skin in the game. There was like some motivation, like we were really trying to do something. Plus, I think for the hospital's perspective, the reason that they wanted an urban farm is because healthy food, we need more people eating healthy food, and there's lack of access to affordable, fresh, culturally appropriate food in the city. So part of the thing that we're trying to do is increase access to good food. So we could have a community garden, and that could be a social enterprise because it does generate some revenue. But we really wanted to kind of up the ante and like have a market garden part of that. And then also trying to find funding, like grant funding, and for an urban farm is actually quite difficult because it doesn't totally fit into the not-for-profit side of things, and it doesn't really fit into the health side of things. So trying to find funding was a challenge. So we developed a farm part, like the farm, and generate quite a bit of earned revenue through that. We have two main social impacts. So one is social inclusion, and the other is good food.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi. How are you?
Okay, so we were supposed to have Jessie Jollymar from Hope Blooms, but we have...
Me.
This is Alvaro Williams, so he's going to take her place right now. You're not too late. We just answered the first question, and I'll let you answer it if you'd like. It's, why is your organization a social enterprise?
Oh, we do good with the money that we make.
If the red light needs to come on.
Red light?
Okay,
thank you. Ooh. So yeah, we do good, social good with the money that we make. An example of that is the scholarship program that we have. So we have a salad dressing that we produce, a fresh herb dressing. So Hope Blooms, we have a fresh herb dressing. We were on Dragon's Den for that product. And the funds that we receive from selling that product, we're selling it through Loblaw, so we're in superstores. The 100% of the proceeds from that go directly into the scholarship fund, access to education fund for the youth that are participants, and they also create the dressing and sell the dressing themselves as well. So that's sort of what makes us a social enterprise. Yeah, and I mean, we also do a bunch of other things as well, but the scholarship is one of the major components.
All right. So how did your social enterprise get started? So how did this idea become a reality?
Me first? Yeah, so how did it get started? How did it become a reality? How did Hope Blooms become a reality? So this happened about 10 years ago, and it happened with our founder. Her name is Jessie. She's the lady that's supposed to be here, but she got busy. It happened with her. She was a registered dietitian in the North End community, and she was running some like food programs with young kids in the community, and she was going around superstores with these kids to get them to buy different vegetables, to try different vegetables, and cooking at home. And the security guards were following them around. So Nova Scotia is historically a very racist place, and so these kids, these little young black kids from the hood, are being followed around the grocery store with Jessie, and they're like, don't worry, Jessie, this happens all the time. And that infuriated her, the fact that they were accepting of this blatant racism. And so she knew at that point that she wanted to do something that was gonna create a big impact on the community. She was walking past the site of our garden now, and it was an abandoned garden at the time, so it was really a mess. She was, I don't know, divinely inspired, I don't know. But she had an idea to transform the space that she had seen into something beautiful that could flourish, and the kids wanted to help her with it. So it was really born from her kind of passion and the drive from the youth as well. I don't want to take up all the time.
Agencies like DASC actually started about 50, 60 years ago around deinstitutionalization in Nova Scotia and in Canada. So the old language would be the Canadian Association for the Mentally Retarded. And then the name changed as we got smarter, and it was the Canadian Association for Community Living. And then we became separated because the advocacy and the service provider being the same, there seemed to be a conflict of interest in that because it's hard to advocate for change when you're also the service provider. So services like DASC were run then by nonprofit boards, and that's how DASC came to be. DASC is about 50 years old, and the whole evolution from persons with disability not being in the school system, fighting for inclusion, and then fighting for what? After school, there was nothing. And so there were some day programs where people did arts and crafts kinds of things. They were literally usually on the outskirts of town. They were not usually in places that could be in basements of churches. So very much people with disabilities were considered to be persons who were objects of charity, and things were done for them. And as we evolved, it became more about this is an investment that you make in people, and everybody has an ability, everybody has something that they can contribute, everybody has a way in which they can become viable and contributing members of society. And so that evolution happened as well for persons with disability. We got to the place in time where you want people to be employed and waged in the community, and for them, some people, that's exactly where they want it to be. For other people, they might need a different kind of environment, and it could be temporary, or it could be where they found their niche and have reached their potential and where they want to be. And so that would be, some of the old language would have been a sheltered workshop. Now it's changed into something else. So you're looking how people can participate in businesses in a way that makes them feel valued and that it is real work. So the evolution from arts and crafts and not into a city and being opposite charity has changed to DASC is a $4 million operation. So you go from working in small things to running a multi-million-dollar company and supporting people to live inclusive lives.
Great. So MetroWorks was actually created by the city of Halifax back in 1977. And in 77, the social assistance was being managed by the city, and they were running a bunch of different employment programs. And what they discovered is that a lot of the clients that they were working with, they would put them out on jobs. They would work there for a while, then they would lose that job, and they would come back and say, well, find me another job. So, they thought this revolving door wasn't really working well. So they decided that to be a bit proactive and actually to create a business that would employ these most disadvantaged people in our city, while at the same time generating some revenue and be able to sustain itself. So that was how we got created. And since 77, MetroWorks has literally run over 20 businesses, has employed hundreds of people. And back in the mid-'80s, we were the world leader in that kind of social enterprise model. And people from all over the world were coming here to look at what was happening in Halifax. And that model got exported to the US, the UK, Australia. So it's been a long time that we've been at this. Like any business that you run, some businesses do well and some don't. So over the course of time, a lot of the businesses that we were running, they were folded in for whatever reason. So that's leaving us right now with just the bakery. But we've taken the lessons learned over the last number of years and are looking at expanding our social enterprise footprint. And we continue to look at that, and with the main focus on how does expanding our footprint help engage the most disadvantaged people in our community. So we don't have growth just for growth's sake. Growth has to involve not only a revenue stream, but that social stream and that inclusion stream. So that makes our business decisions a bit more challenging and a little bit more different than from some mainstream businesses, but it's the model that we were founded under, and this is the model that we continue to work under.
So how we got started, I ran the farm for 1 year as a community garden. And then the next year, and the market garden part of it was really small. We focused on the community garden part. And then the next year, we got the market garden started. I got a grant to hire one person, but I didn't want to put too much pressure on her to sell. So all of the food we grew, we donated to the food bank. And so that was my way of like trying to grow real slow and like let my staff person build some capacity. So then the second year that she was working there, that's when we really started our market garden and started to grow for sale. So the market garden has been going for 5 years. And so the first year she just grew for the food bank and we didn't have a program. And then the next year we developed a program and we sold. And so the program was, we asked to work with ISANS, which is Immigrant Settlement Association, because we knew that there were a lot of new Canadians that came from a farming background. They were farmers in their home countries, and they knew how to grow food really well, but that often they had lower language levels. And there was funding to help people gain employability skills. So we were like, this is, there's 2 problems looking for a date. So that was the partner organization that we chose to work with. And so we've been developing that program for the last 4 years. And like constantly kind of change that model. And so now we're looking to change that model again. To be a little bit less of a market garden where we're setting a farm plan and we're going to try and grow all of these crops for a market, like a farm. And we're going to change it to be a little bit more like an incubator. So we're going to divide the farm into a bunch of plots and get people to kind of run their own little farm that's part of our bigger farm. So that's the long version of like how we started really kind of slow and incremental, and also how we're constantly trying to adjust our business model to work better and sort of balance like the revenue, the impact, and the workload.
So tell us about a challenge that you have faced in your social enterprise.
Funding and fundraising is always a challenge. I think for us it's been quite a challenge because there is no funding for urban farms. Over the last few years, like food has become a real thing, and so there are a lot more funding streams around food, so there's starting to be more opportunities for us to apply for funding. But yeah, trying to make the numbers work. I've been spending like the last week on spreadsheet doing budgeting, so I'm a little square-eyed from that. So that's a challenge. Evaluation, and so trying to figure out how to talk about our impact and measure our impact and do evaluation has been like a really steep learning curve. I just never learned that in university, and so just to figure out like how the strategic plan and the evaluation plan and those things all work together and harvest the numbers so that we can brag about what we're doing has been a challenge. And I guess along with that, like trying to run a business where we're generating revenue, but also really taking care of people. And so both of those things take time and energy and thought. And so on the ground, like at a staff level, when we're making decisions as staff, like which of those things are we going to prioritize and what do we have time for? That is like a constant day-to-day challenge.
Yeah, Jamie, that sure is a big part of our challenge because, I mean, we have all the benefits of running a business with all the benefits of running a program tucked inside of it. So you know, all the problems and challenges of both of those things compounded together. So it makes day-to-day decision-making challenging a lot of times. So for example, in a bakery, our bakery is about 2/3 bigger than what it needs to be from a floor space area, just because outside of our 8 staff, we have 25 participants in our program. So in a normal bakery, you might have 2 people scaling. We have 8. So we need 8 of everything as opposed to 2 of everything. And people come into our program, they're not coming from a bakery program, so their knowledge of working in a bakery is limited. So, they do peculiar things like put plastic in the ovens. So we do that, or ask one person to wash a bunch of electronic scales for us, so she threw them in the sink to wash them. So we have those sorts of challenges to deal with. And, a lot of bakeries are very automated, and we tend to be very hands-on. So we have, reps from different companies coming to us all the time, offering to sell us pieces of machinery that will automate our process, which a lot of customers like. When you go out and buy a burger, you want the burger to look the same the first time you buy it, and the 100th time you buy it. But when you do things by hand, you get a little bit of variability. And some people like that homemade look, some people don't. But for us, it's all about, engaging our clients. So if I were to buy a piece of machinery that make hamburger buns, so the first one looked like the millionth one, well, that would be great, but then what do the participants in our program do? So we have to keep that in mind when running a business. The other thing that we get involved in, I think, is because we're running a social enterprise and we very much make some of our decisions from a social perspective, a lot of times the business community just doesn't quite know how to deal with us. So we have conversations with business, and they tend to treat us more on the social side as opposed to the business side. So they look at us like, that you do great work, and they pat you on the head and what a wonderful thing you're doing. But really, from a business perspective, they don't really expect to engage with you at that level. So that it's a bit of a challenge sometimes to get them to understand that, we want to talk to you business to business, not business to social. And that we can meet your business objectives and help you do what you need to do from that perspective. So that's always a challenge. And I think the last thing that I say is that, we don't have an owner. A lot of entrepreneurs, they own their own business. They're willing to work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week to make that business run. They've got their, mother, father, cousin, working for them, kids for nothing. When you're working in a social enterprise the way that we are inside of a nonprofit, everything is staff-based, so we don't have an owner. So we don't have anybody willing to work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, that adds to the challenge of trying to run a small business tucked inside of an organization. But at the end of the day, we do good work, so it keeps us going.
I guess building on the same theme, that even for DASC, capacity is one of the biggest challenges, that you're doing an awful lot of work on the side of your desk. For example, I'm on vacation today. So there's never a day that you're not doing something. So, sometimes maybe our staff don't do the 16 hours a day. Most of my management team do. A lot of times I do as well, but it's something that you really like to do. So we're kind of good with that. One of the most interesting challenges that we have is one of the things I think that I enjoy the most, and that is, how do you tell the story, and how you tell your story without disadvantaging the persons that you support, or in some ways making their very private lives very public. So how do you do that with their consent, with their informed consent, and with the full knowledge that their image, their story, may play out in multiple places, that they are never going to see it, and that they're never going to hear it, and they're never going to be in a room to see how their story is received by people. So we have to be very, very considerate of that challenge and figure out how do we do it well. In terms of the social enterprise and telling that story and about measuring impact is one of my passions these days. And so we're actually going to be working with Scotland in their social value lab. And they're going to come over and they're going to spend some time with us, and we're going to take 6 months, and we're going to go through developing an exercise from A to Z, I'll share, about how we actually do social impact measurement in a business case way, so that although you are social to business, you're also business to business. I graduated from this beautiful university, and the program that I graduated from was Child and Youth Studies. And I remember my family thinking, oh, so you're going to learned how to look after kids, and you're one of 11, thought we taught you that, babysat your whole life. But when I go back to Cape Breton and people hear that I run a multi-million-dollar company and I negotiate with all levels of government, and that we're at the table with the Atlantic Growth Strategy and we're talking about how do we build a better Nova Scotia, then people are like, oh my goodness, how did that all happen? And so challenge actually is what motivates and what gives you really some fabulous energy to do some innovative things.
So it's what's a challenge that we face as a social enterprise? For Hope Blooms, I can say that one of the challenges that we face as a social enterprise is trying to scale while maintaining our integrity or like our originality and our authenticity as well. We would love to expand our model, like our Hope Blooms model. We would love to take that to other cities across Canada, other urban areas in Canada, and even the world. But it's just a struggle because, as mentioned by some of these panelists, like funding is an issue. We do have the salad dressing sales, but the money for that goes directly into the scholarship fund. So, like for my wages, for example, for the lights to stay on, we have to write grants. And so to scale while still being dependent on government funding or granting bodies is really, really hard. The other piece is maintaining our integrity. Like the salad dressing that we produce is still being, to this day even, is still being made by our youth. Many times we've had people approach us and say, why don't you just take this over to Burnside into a big factory, and make 1,000 bottles a day just with like a push of a button almost. Maximize profit, minimize cost. It makes sense when you say it like that. But we don't want to take it out of the hands of the youth that created it, that own it. We don't want to take it we don't want to take that ownership away from them. So it's trying to find a way to scale while still maintaining our integrity. That's one of the biggest challenges for us at Hope Blooms, for sure.
So how do you balance your social and financial goals?
Well, should I just go? Again, how do we balance our social goals and our financial goals? We always put our social goals above our financial goals because that for us that's most important. And our social goals really are making sure that the youth that we serve make it to post-secondary so that they can be successful, going forward in their life. So we put that above the kind of financial goals that we need to survive. So sometimes we end up just taking less money in certain areas for certain things. And yeah, because the community of youth that we're working with it's rare for the kids in our community to go to university. It's very rare. And so if we can begin to shift tip that scale a bit and start to take some of these kids who are being born into disenfranchised situations and giving them boosting them so that they can empower and change their own lives, I feel like that takes weight over making sure that we, raise enough money or make enough money. We do want to make money, definitely, because we want to see the scholarship fund succeed. But yeah, we have to. It's hard finding a balance for sure.
So a good friend of mine always said to me one time, he says, Kathy, without mission, there's no money. Without money, there's no mission. So don't be fooled. In a social enterprise, you have to make a profit. Break even actually doesn't do it. So most social enterprises could be 2 months operating expenses away from not existing. You have to be very, very careful about how you run your business and that you don't take risks that you can't afford not to take. It's really important to make really good business decisions wherever you operate, I think. As much as I will always, the mission part of DASC is supporting people with intellectual disability. The mission part of social enterprise, Network of Nova Scotia, is about setting a really good framework for social enterprise so that they can flourish and grow in Nova Scotia. A challenge of social enterprises across this province is access to capital. If you're going to run a social enterprise for a day, the first thing you got to figure out is where you're going to get that money to start. And if you're a nonprofit, you don't want to put up your house because you don't have a house. You can't put up your car because your car is not good collateral. So where are you going to get that capital to start is really an important thing to do. So SENS wants to take that kind of an environment and change it. One of the things, hopefully, that you guys will hear in the news in the next month or so, we hope, will be the announcement of a social enterprise investment fund. So when Hope Bloom wants to scale up in the way that they want to, and if they need some access to capital, then we're going to have something in place that's going to make that a lot easier than going to traditional lending institutions. So that's good.
Yeah, I mean, social enterprises at the bottom line are still businesses. And as everybody said, at the end of the day, you still got to make money. So balancing, profits versus production versus program is an ongoing challenge. I think but at the end of the day, again, like I said before, you just can't, generate revenue for revenue's sake. It has to have a social purpose attached to it. So if that helps us to engage more clients in our programs and that sort of stuff, the things that we look at. But there are also other business opportunities that have come our way that we've taken pass on because it didn't engage participants, right? So it's always trying to find that thing. So there's lots of opportunities for expansion sometimes that we choose to walk away from because it doesn't meet with our social mandate. But again, our goal is not to try to take over, well, I shouldn't say my goal is not to try to take over the world because really it is. But our goal is to do it within and not lose focus of the bottom line purpose of the organization, because you can really get into mandate drift, right? So you start doing one thing and you start chasing money, and a few years down the road you wind up being something totally different than what you started out being. And you look at yourself and you go, who the hell am I and how did I get here? Right, so it's important, to really keep your eye on the ball about what you want to do and what your purpose is, and to do it in a sustainable way. As Kathy said, access to, a lot of the borrowing mechanisms aren't available to nonprofit social enterprises, right? When, as an individual, as a CEO of the company, I'm not going to put up my own house and my own car or my own, resources to finance loans for the organization. So that kind of impacts on kind of the sorts of financial institutions that you can deal with. And also, I mean, I'm sure we all would agree, is that we are stewards of these organizations. I mean, we hope they were here long before we got there, and they'll be here long after we're gone. And so during our tenure, we're not going to mortgage the farm to kind of on some sort of wild scheme, right? So everything we do has to be methodical. And we all are responsible to a board of directors that really helps us make some of those great business decisions. So, it's just not us pulling the trigger on things. We've got a great board around us that also helps, with the input into how we move forward as a business. But it's definitely one of the challenges that we face in balancing all those priorities.
I guess I don't, I think the term balance can sometimes apply like a either or. But like I was saying, I just did our budget. So I was just thinking about, it's really about how to make the numbers work in a way that's really going to do what we're trying to do. And so I'm just writing a grant application right now, and it's really about making that application fit what we're going to do. So sometimes it's, it's like a massaging. And really highlighting their priorities and some of the things that are our priorities, which are not their priorities, just talking less about those things. So making it work. I think my motto for a lot of this has been go over, go under, go through, just try and figure out the way. Yeah, I think we have a really clear sense of what it is we're trying to do. And so, yeah, I guess that's the most important thing, and we just try and make all the other pieces work.
Okay, so what advice do you have for aspiring social entrepreneurs?
There's a few tools that I've been using recently that I think are pretty fantastic. There's one that's called I'm like looking for someone else to tell me what the name of it is. Maybe you guys know the social impact, it's like got the,
Social return on investment?
hold on, I have it in my bag. Yeah, it's the social impact canvas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, fancy words. But so at the top, it has the impact, like the big picture kind of thing, and then it has the priority outcomes, how you measure them, and then how you actually do them. I got this through Common Good Solutions, and so we're in the process of doing it for the farm. But then I'm also working on my own business, and I'm part of a cooperative farm, and we're looking to start up an incubator farm for that. So I've been running those businesses through this tool as well, and it's really helpful to be super clear on like, what are we trying to do, and how does that boil out? And like, so the what and the big picture comes first, and then the how kind of follows in later. So that's really helpful. And then there's also a tool called the Level 2 Assessment, which has all these little questions. And so for every program that we do, we've been running them through those tools. And it's really helpful to see, because if we're going to start a new program, or even if we're deciding to like keep a program or change a program, do we have the capacity? Do we have the money? Do we have the know-how? Does it meet our priorities? And just having a little filter to run those things through to make those decisions is super helpful. And then I'm helping another friend start up a business, and so there's another thing called the Social Business Model Canvas. So that's a tool that I'm like just going through with him to help map it out.
Advice for social entrepreneurs. You know, I think a social entrepreneur is not a whole lot different than a regular entrepreneur. You still need a good business idea and the ability to execute it and to do all the things you need to do from a business perspective. I think, you know, where social entrepreneurs differ is that there is an overlying sense of wanting to give back to your community or to your environment. And looking at, you know, the sustainability and the impact that the business that you're doing has on, you know, your community and your environment, and trying to minimize that as much as possible, or at least have a positive impact. I find a lot of the larger corporations that we work with tend to think of social as gift giving. So, you know, when we approach them to look at it either from a business partnership perspective or any other perspective, it's like, you know, you guys do great work, let me write you a check. And it's like, well, we don't want a check. We want business, or we want you to hire some of our clients, you know. But a lot of times they think all they need to do is write the check and they've done their part, and you know, they get to walk away from that social responsibility. So I think, you know, keeping that in mind as you know, move through your careers about, you know, what is the social impact really of what we're doing, and what is the community impact, and what's the sustainability on our environment or on our food services, or, you know, how are we engaging the most disadvantaged people in our community? And if you can keep all those things in mind as you move through things, then, you know, regardless of what you call yourself, you are a social entrepreneur. So I think, you know, it's not about, you know, running nonprofits like you know, we do or whatever, but it's just about, you know, again, what your impact is on your community.
So for the mechanics side of the answer, I guess, if you go to www.senns.ca, that's the SENS website. As it stands now, it's a pretty good resource. The new website is just held at bay. We're waiting for a government announcement. The new website is going to have a provincial survey that was done in 2017 and all the results. And then it's also going to have a portal. And in that portal, there'll be a place where you can go to the 6 pillars. So across the world, there are common 6 pillars of social enterprise, and they're skills, capital and financing, access to markets, demonstrating value, regulatory frameworks, and networks and community engagement. And under all of those pillars, there will be a list in the portal of every resource that we can find in Nova Scotia, in Canada, and around the world that we have gathered. So if there's anything that you're going to look for in terms of as a social entrepreneur, if you go to that website and once it's launched, which hopefully will be around the end of February or within the first week of March, but that is the most current and up-to-date information for social enterprise that will exist right now. And we think actually it will probably be one of the most up-to-date in Canada. So that's the mechanics, I guess, in terms of some advice around social enterprise. The not the mechanics side is to tell you guys that I've learned more from all of my mistakes than I have from any of my successes over 37 years in this field. At first, they devastated me. I wasn't used to that. And then once you pick yourself up and you dust yourself off and you just don't make the same mistake the second time around. I think that's the best advice I can give to anybody. And in this industry, being true to yourself, and as our wonderful gentleman here said about maintaining your integrity, I think that in the world of social enterprise, those are the two things that will stand you through any crises. And it will also help you celebrate with really true partners.
Awesome. And so, yeah, I mean, what I have to say is a bit similar to that as well. The kind of advice that we would give you from Hope Blooms is to be genuine and to be yourself in what you do. Social enterprises are very popular right now. They're on the upswing. Everybody wants to start one. But the question is why? Why do you want to start one? Is it because they're popular and you know that you could make money doing good? That's not really, I would say don't do it then. I would say don't do it. Because you want to, you want to be perceived as genuine. There are companies out there who are doing good for the sake of doing good, and you can tell that they're just doing that. I call it like the get into heaven pass. It's like they're doing it just so that they can get to heaven. They're doing it not because they feel they want to or it's the right thing to do. They're doing it so that there's an end goal, a bigger goal of those shiny pearly gates. The other thing that I would say is listen to the people that you serve. So if you're starting a social enterprise and you're trying to give back and you want to do good for a certain demographic, a group of people or whatever, you actually need to listen to them. You need to engage with them and you need to listen to them. You need to, do what they want and what they need, not just what you think they need. Because we can operate from a much higher place often. We operate from where we are in our lives, not necessarily where the clients that we're trying to serve or the participants or the people that we're trying to serve, we don't necessarily operate from where they are. So what I would say is to listen to them and engage with them and learn from them as much as you possibly can, because that's going to contribute to your success more than, a proper business structure and all your financials lined up in place, is to actually value the people that you're serving. That's the advice that we would give.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I want to add one more, and that's to find a mentor. If you can find a really good mentor that you can trust and have good conversations with that can be free-flowing and easy, somebody who you feel comfortable with and who has done it, then finding a mentor is one of the best things that you can do. And for the mentor themselves, I mentor new CEOs and EDs in the nonprofit sector, and it's probably one of the things that makes me learn a lot as well. So it's a really good place to find some help.
Okay, so we have a few minutes left for the panel. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask? Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Jamie?
So you live on a farm?
Yeah.
And I know traditional farms around here, there's a sweet potato farm. So they give their appropriate, proper shape, proper length, size, you know what I mean? They sell that in the grocery store, and the rest, which is fill this room, literally goes in the garbage. So are you guys running like that, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Sarah is the market gardener, and she does have very high quality standards. And so often I'll go by and I'm like, what's wrong with that radish? And she's like, no. So we sell all the pretty vegetables, and those go out to the CSA. But anything that is left over just gets taken. We have a little free food pantry on the farm, and so any of the ugly produce we put in the free food pantry, but it like barely even gets there. Yeah, people are so happy to take all of that. And so even a lot of the plants that are considered weeds here are considered gourmet vegetables in many other countries. And because we work with people from so many different countries, there are like carefully tended weed patches all through the farm. So there's very little waste. And even the things that do make it to the compost pile, there's like a continual crew of people like crows that just take the edible things.
And compost isn't waste. Compost isn't waste, right?
Yeah.
Like compost isn't waste. You put your compost back onto your garden to provide nutrients to the plants that are growing. Another thing is that we, at Hope Blooms, we work with a group of young Syrian guys, and they actually take like rejected and ugly food and repurpose it and turn it into other products that you can't even tell that the strawberries were kind of flat looking. So, yeah, there are options out there for sure.
So that's kind of like an enterprise in itself, isn't it? Like,
Yes, it is. It is.
do it that way.
Yeah, they have their own business. Yeah, these guys have their own business, and they're actually selling out of local source right now on Agricola Street, and I think their business name is, I don't want to get it confused with the chocolate, it's like Piece of the East, I think.
Oh, it is Piece of the East.
Piece of the East, yeah, our Syrian friend, yeah. So yeah, it's cool. So there's opportunities for food that isn't as beautiful. There's opportunities.
Yeah, and for us, the food that gets taken, we like try to measure it and then include that as part of our social impact. Yeah, and that's like one of the metrics, like how much food was donated, basically, off the farm.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, so do we ever feel like discouraged by a lack of funding? In a sense, is that what you're asking? Um, yes and no. For us, we don't, like for us at Hope Blooms, it's really a lot about excellence and bringing your best self. So even when there is a crappy situation where we didn't get a grant or the funding didn't come through or something happened and the money gets pulled, we kind of keep that among ourselves. So now we're sharing it with the room here, but we keep that among ourselves, and we stay positive for the youth, because every day we are working with young people. So there's young people right now in our space, and they're working on a social enterprise that they're going to start. That's like a green landscaping business. And we're there, and our office is there, and so, sometimes bad news comes, but we deal with it. You know what I mean? We talk about what happens. We're open as much as we can about things. And if something doesn't come through, like if money doesn't come through, we look other places, we try harder, and it can be discouraging, but you can't let that get you down, You can't really let that stop you. Like, where hope blooms, there's hope everywhere. Sorry.
Anybody else want to add, or? Good. Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
So There's two reasons. So one is I'm leaving the project, so we're going to be down a staff person. So we need to figure out a way to reduce the workload but maintain our programming. And then the other reason is that, and this is something that Sarah's really struggled with. So in past, the way we ran the market garden was we created a farm plan, these are the crops we're going to grow, this is what we're going to sell, this is where we're going to sell them. So then Sarah was like directing people on what to do. But she was like, these people know how to farm. Like, these people know how to farm really well. And so we were always interested in the incubator model. So the challenge with the incubator model is that to encourage people to farm in the current era is questionable. There's no profit in farming, and to run a business, to run a, it's just like there's like hardly any margin on food. So to encourage newcomers to Canada or anyone to get into farming is probably bad advice. But there's still such a need for food. And there is the possibility of farming in backyards. So what we're going to try this year is to divide our market garden into a bunch of smaller pieces. And then Sarah's not going to tell people what to do. She's going to support them and help them sell their produce and do financial reporting. Exactly. And so she can help them get the seeds, learn language, like support them in doing what they want to do. And so that means we're going to decrease our revenue because we're not going to have stuff for sale as much. So it'll be a little bit interesting to see how that model shakes out. But I think it'll be a lot more empowering for the participants. And I think depending on how it goes, it might end up being more profitable because it'll be interesting to see what people can farm and how much they can grow. And then if we can start to access other farming spaces, if we can start to access other yards, and then work together to share like the tractor or the tools and the market, then, and I'm not sure exactly what the business model is going to be in terms of, like, if Dotteram grows all the veg and sells the veg, how's the financial flow going to go? We're still working on that very important detail. Yeah, so it's about capacity and I don't know, what's the word, like dignity or motivate. What's the word I'm looking for?
Don't have to hang out to dry there.
Yeah, all right. Like self-determination. Yeah.
Right. So I think this is all the time we have left for our panel. It's 4:30 right on the dot. So I just want to say thank you all for coming. Thank you, Jamie, Dave, Kathy, and Alvaro. That was really awesome. I hope everyone's feeling inspired for the rest of the event. I think it's going to be great.